Got it. Beautiful, beautiful. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, even if it's just for our own perusal later,
Thank
you know,
you.
I love the idea to record it. I think it's amazing.
Thank you, Shawno. I greatly appreciate it. And just to kind of recap what we were just discussing before we jumped on, we were talking about how I sent you an SOS the other day. Was it maybe like a few days ago? I had woken up in the morning really like, where am I? First and foremost, that was weird, which I know what that means. That means I must have been astral traveling. I was in multiple dimensions. And so when I came out, I was still defragmented when I woke up in the morning. So right at that point, I grounded myself, called back all of my essence from wherever I was at, because I knew that's what happened, because I couldn't even get out of bed as normal just to go and do my thing to get ready for the day. And so then I was like, okay, I couldn't even move. And so I remember texting you because I was like, there isn't any other soul besides my husband that loves and respects and honors me without judgment, that really can either understand or hold space for me in a time where it was like my mind was being almost unraveled, is what I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for giving me an opportunity. And I had written you, and if I may, I'm going to just pull and ask and say what the question was, so that way others can know what the heck was going on when I reached out to you. But I had written you a question, and you're the first person that I wrote to, because I was like, who can I talk to
So
when
honored.
I am going through this, right? And you're the only person that I could say that has very similar connections to the subtle energies and to guides of that nature. So I felt very safe. And so this is what I wrote to you, which was 9/11 my time on July 1st, which was 11/11 at your time. Didn't even pay attention. How funny was this? I literally woke up, wrote you, that was a 9/11 SOS, support other soul signal, help me, I'm overwhelmed. And this is what I wrote. Hi, Sean, how are you doing? I did the quick, courtesy. Do you feel that we're in a system with multiple choices, yet our fate in those options are the only destinies you can choose from? Really? I haven't talked to you for a minute, and this is the question I ask.
It's a big question.
You are so
beautifully
kind and loving and very warm. And you went into this whole, which I had to reread several times, because you were talking about how times we are what is called the choosing. And you said it takes place and it's a primary focus of one who is an older soul and is achieving graduation. So to me, I was like, good, because I've been asking for months for expansion, soul consciousness growth, unification with cosmic connection. And so I've been asking, and I started doing wizardry as of April.
Awesome.
And here I am.
Awesome. I love it.
Let me talk to my friend and see what the heck is going on. Do you want to kind of like touch base about like how you responded on that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't remember what I said.
Oh, because you were channeling.
I was sort of channeling, I think. And sometimes when I'm doing that, I lose it. Like, I don't know what I said really. I remember the question and stuff like that, but when it starts to sort of come through, whether I'm texting or writing it or speaking, I forget what I said.
Well, do you want me to kind of just give like an idea of like what you said? Is that okay if I
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, this was really helpful, by the way. You said the choice simply is to live and embody love or fear. So being within the present moment of whatever stage of emotion that you're in. However, when it comes to something like destiny, it gets a bit more complicated. I like that you mentioned that, because that's where I was perplexed. One will be awarded opportunities to traverse pathways that they hold the vibration of. They are the ones responsible for setting their vibration and integrating aspects of self that they have rejected in order to hold more light, or rather perceive more light, because the shadow distortion converts to light when unconditional love is applied to the shadow. That's a lot. I had to like literally go through each one. I was like, let me digest this. So I was at a vibration of, I would like to know more. I started to go in deeper into the timelines. And when I started jumping into the timelines, it started to look like a spider web effect, like a cob effect. And I go, whoa, wait a minute. There's multiple directions happening simultaneously. What is this? And so depending on the person, where they're at vibrationally, what they're holding on to is what they're going to path into. So here are the multiple options. We'll say A through C. So we'll say Jane has an opportunity to move to India and become a wonderful teacher. And she may be at a space where she is super excited, open, enthralled. She's been studying, committed. She's ready to do it. And now she's got other options because she meets this amazing man that she's been calling for her whole entire existence. And now he shows up, but he can't join her. So here's another multiple choice. Then there's another multiple choice where she could say, I don't want to be the teacher. I don't want to meet this person, and I'm going to go down a whole other path. So which ones are they? So I was like, okay, so we're given an opportunity of free will, but yet we're not, because you just got those three choices.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I thought that was interesting. And what caused me to think that was when I started working on people's archetypes. So I started working on people's archetypes, and then I started saying, okay, divine source, let me check in with this person's brainwaves and their Akashic records. Now, say they came in as a target and they served being target for so long, and they had to be this target archetype because they needed to learn something significant to grow from. And then they time into this current timeline, 2021, planet Earth, woohoo. And then all of a sudden, they're no longer needing that target archetype. They've already gained whatever they needed, and it's ready to be transitioned to a different archetype. So I was like, oh, this is exciting. So I have this list, and I'm like, okay, soul, what are you ready for now? Let's find out. And so the client's like, oh, Jess, I would love to be these different archetypes. Can you check? And I'm like, yeah, let's take a look. Now, if I could, I would have just give it to them, right? But that's not my ability. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm just here to give you what you're necessarily needing as a tool. And so then I'll be like, okay, I check, and there's like different options. So I'm like, okay, so target 2, enchantress. No, that one didn't work. Okay, target 2, teacher. Oh, no, that's not coming. They're like, but I really want to be a teacher. That's great, but no. I want to be a ruler. And I'm like, that's the one that you're given. Here it is. We're going to drop it in, take out the target role, pull it out of the Akashic records that no longer exist. We're going to drop in the new archetype, the ruler, we'll say, for example. And so then I started noticing, I'm like, well, they kind of got an opportunity to choose, yet not really, because they had to be given this specific tool for whatever they're going to be doing in this timeline and moving forward. So that's when it started leading me with all kinds of ideas. So what are your thoughts on that? Because that's what happened to me as I started studying it further.
I believe that we all are imbued with the divine will. So the divine will is what architects the blueprint of one's destiny. However, when we're distorted and not aligned, we perceive the divine will differently, right? So that we'll misinterpret things. We came in, I believe, from our higher self when we were being pre-incarnative templating. There was a particular thing, or many particular things that are set for us by us. The higher self is us, who has turned back in time to then support and guide us from the higher densities. So they are us in the future, more or less, in time, right? Billions of years later, and in how we measure time. And so we're offered these vibrational choices that are matching our vibration. But the issue becomes that we get offered what we truly desire, but because we don't, we're distorting sometimes the divine will, we don't think we can do that for some reason. Usually there's a fear, right? Like we may really want to be a musician, and we'll play guitar and we'll sing and write songs, but we won't distribute them or publish them, or even attempt to do any of that, because we don't feel capable, which is a distortion. We're infinite, perfect, divine beings here to create. That's what we're here to do. And so when we distort those things, we start to look at the other opportunities, which are at different sort of vibrational frequencies or timelines, that feel more comfortable to us because we're sitting in a bit of fear, right? But we're usually also offered the true divine will, which we can deny for a while. Eventually, we'll end up aligning and following it eventually at some point, whether in this lifetime or in the next. But if we're in this lifetime awakening and becoming conscious and self-actualizing, knowing the self, accepting the self fully, that's when we start to pull away from all the fear. Almost naturally, we start to notice the illusion of fear for what it is, and disintegrate these various fear systems that we've created in our personas and archetypes. And then we sort of start to get more and more into alignment. And so I believe that the unconscious human that is not really ready to wake up is more or less almost like a robot in many ways. They're sort of just responding to the programming, the conditioning that keeps them roaming around. They're still executing divine will, because all will is creator's will. So they're still doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing, despite maybe suffering a lot, right? And inflicting suffering, and participating in that suffering game. Right. They're meant to do that in those moments. But then as they awaken, they're like, oh, and then the spiral of what I call it I don't know if other people call it this. I think I've read it somewhere, but the house of ego. Mm-hmm. We have the house of ego, and it's when we form it as children in our society, it tends to be really dark, like a lot of fear and distortion, and it's a sort of a dark, gloomy sort of place. As we awaken, it gets brighter in there, and so we see all the contrast, and then we start to tear down the walls. But then we get into this place of the abyss, the dark sea, the nothingness, the disassociation from the old identifications. The things we believed were important to us are no longer relevant to us at all. So now we feel lost. Right. And then that's when we start to seek for the creator, and the purpose and the will, and we start to look for that, knowing that we're looking for ourselves. And once we know that we're looking for ourselves, that's when we start to really find it, right? Because we start to call for it. Absolutely. So we're holding those vibrations, we start to call it, and we build a new, prettier, fancier, lighter house with, that can house, instead of housing sort of demonic or dark attachments, we house holy light attachments and light, and we associate more with our higher guidance and our angels, our spirits, our guides, and however they come in for us. Right. But we start to make a home for them, and so our default states sort of start to we sort of reprogram ourselves more or less.
Absolutely. I agree. I love how you're talking about how the light comes in, it does bring up the contrast. And I like to call it is where at that moment, whatever was hidden or oppressed must come up to the surface. So I explain to people as we're experiencing that, I'm like, you've had years of whatever experiences that are conditioned and stored in your cell memories, because that's what we have, which is why we can tune and tap into previous timelines, into the current timeline, because at that point we have storage of experiences in this vessel of ours. And so I agree, which is why as we are in the process of growing and progression and self-realization that turns into self-actualization is when we get to a point of we are evolving. we are dropping and releasing those things that held us back. And so I started noticing that with everybody and everything. And I already knew to an extent until I started tapping into it more in April. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting that there are multiple timelines that we can choose from. And weird part is that I've noticed as I've been accessing and going through the timelines with everyone, some of us will have a couple options right there available for us. Now, I explain to people, like, there is no wrong or right, you will find your way. Because once you have to make a decision, like you said, even if you don't do it right away, it's okay. The other choices that you're making will eventually spiral you right exactly where you need to be, where you were supposed to move forward. You'll get there.
Yep. The volume of the contrast, like the volume of the disharmony will increase as we are going down the wrong path. So it gets louder and louder and louder. And because we're holding more light, we're more aware, we can't ignore it. So it gets louder and louder and louder. We see it too clearly. So we have to go the other way. We are not, we won't be contented.
Some people will still stay, and they have that right. And I've noticed that some people
of course, yeah.
there. And I'm like, well, then that's your choice too. You have all the right to stay in your gunk and love it.
Yeah. Some people, Ross says it really nicely. He says some people enjoy the darkness. They enjoy the nighttime. They enjoy the confusion. They're safe in that feeling, and they enjoy the separation. And others enjoy the light, and it's a preference almost, right?
Agreed. No, I love that you mentioned that, because I have a couple clients that, once they start opening doors, they start shedding and releasing, they're freaking out, because now their life is literally changing before their eyes. They're no longer vibing with the same people, marriages, jobs, location. And they're like, what happened? I'm like, sweetie, this is called a healing crisis. When you come to a point and you discarded, you opened up the storage unit and you said, okay, let's clean house. So we're going to do this and this and that. So you ended up taking out what no longer served you. You got rid of it. Now you made space for new opportunities and existences to take place in your timeline. And that's when the person gets freaked out. And I'm like, but this is what you wanted. You wanted change. So now you were actually given it. And so that's what I started noticing.
Yeah, I believe that in each of us, we have the false self and the true self. Like the true self is directed in alignment with the inner being, or the highest, the higher being, higher self, however we want to phrase it. But we also have the false self. And so when we have those healing crises, we sort of, usually without meaning to, we've noticed we're in false selfhood. And so these things, like, we've been rejecting our true self, our true nature, our true vibration, our true frequencies. We've been rejecting for 30 years or however long. And then we go, none of this feels right. And then we still miss it though. Like we're losing it, and we're like, oh my God, what's happening? I'm losing everything. And we're not aware that we're creating the space, like you said, for the more resonant opportunities.
Absolutely. And that's where I'm telling people, I'm like, this is not a breakdown. This is a breakthrough. This is not you losing. This is you gaining. I was like, change the perspective. You're not the same person. You said, I am ready to do this and do that. I'm ready to take whatever was blocking me and get it out of the way. Now there's no blockages. So they're uncomfortable because they're vibing at a new frequency. They're changing their mindset. Their consciousness is now lightened, has elevated to a place of where they're like, there's more to life than what I thought there was. There's more to me than I gave myself credit to. And so that's when I started saying, like, wow, we have options, and some extent we don't. And I understand now why too, Sean, why we can't have complete, full, free will. Because then if we did,
not at the human level, the human thinks they want certain things, but the human is often almost incorrect in what they actually want.
Yeah.
And so, like, part of what I noticed as the human, like, I almost have these, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, I have almost 2 or 3 perspectives at all times to view the moment. I can view it from Sean, or I can view it from what I call Ka, which is my higher that I channel.
Yes.
And I start to be able to see how Sean notices it, and Ka, I can sort of understand that Sean wants money right now,
Yes.
or whatever. Sean wants a
Whatever it is
donut
at that moment. Yeah.
whatever it is. Sean, like almost like walking a dog, right? It's almost like what it feels like now, where I'm sort of walking my dog, and sometimes he'll poop on the grass, and so we just clean it up and we go about our day. And somebody else said that analogy. I think it was Aaron Abke. I don't know if you've ever seen his content, but he said that, and I loved it, because that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like sort of walking the dog, and the dog sometimes doesn't know what's best for it, right? It sometimes gets into some things that are dangerous, or whatever. And so the guide is there, the higher guidance is there to help adjust and help make sure that the path is the right one, that we don't run around freely on the road and get hit by traffic, right? So there's like there's what ends up happening is like a participation with the human, and the higher guidance starts to come into harmony, in my experience.
I love that you mentioned that. So we have similar point of views. Obviously, it would make more sense. When I was growing up, because I've been in childcare for over 20 years, which I retired in April of 2020. But while I was there, I obviously, as the adult, I would be the one that would have to assess the environment, help the child to learn about a direction that they can take, give them their own free will, but within limitation, to protect the child because their lack of maturity and experience. And I feel that way till this day. It's so cool that someone else used the illustration of owner to pet. I used adult to child. So we are both, right? So here, as the adult function of Jess tells the inner child of Jess, hey, Jess, this is what we're going to do instead. And I'm like, the inner child goes, but why? Older Jess, I want to do this. And it's like, because we haven't accomplished to get there yet, sweetheart. We have a few more steps to go. Then we're going to get there. And then you'll undernd what I'm trying to teach you. And that's
then you get
how
to
I
witness
feel.
the tantrums. You get to witness
I get tantrums.
right?
Are you kidding me?
No, I don't want to.
Well, my inner child, we joke about, and this is something that has had a persona of mine since I was a little girl. We call her Jolene. And Jolene is very childlike, mischievous, and she is a person that questions everything. She's the one that got me in trouble at church when I said, but I thought you said God was everywhere. So why do I have to go into the box? I don't understand. And so then that's when, so Jolene is the one that puts everything to surface, a very childlike perception, right? And everything's just very nude. And I have to decide what to do with that information given to me. So there is a lot of interaction playing between my adult and childlike persona that I have to work out daily.
Can I share something too? I believe we're in what's called the Age of Horus, which is the site of the playing out the thematic child personas in our life. So I believe that we're getting to a place where we're sort of meant to, or it will feel very harmonious to us typically, to let the inner child direct most of it. The glee, the innocence, the unconditional love, the love of mystery, this information, and and that aligns with the Age of Aquarius of truth and light and joy, right? And
elevation.
And so I think a lot of what we're doing is like we're sort of balancing some of the child's tantrums and accepting them fully and loving those too. And like honoring them, right? Honoring those, feeling it, like get it, like observing it, feeling it, not making it identity, but noticing it,
not pretending and putting it like it's a dust bunny underneath the rug. And I really love that you said that. It's so important. That's what not only have I learned as my soul lesson, and it sounds like the same thing, is like it's important for us to be very present in our thoughts and our emotions, which is what I was doing that day when I had reached out to you and I said, oh my gosh, I must be present. And I mean, I cried. I went through a couple moments because I started realizing that there is I already knew that there was no wrong. It was just on a different level of acceptance, I would say. It was like, oh, the people that may have hurt me or that I have hurt, we can't call we could, it'd be fine. We could call each other villains, but really out of all the people on this planet, we have chosen specific souls that will trigger us, that will make us go against the grain, that will refine ourselves. So really, why are we hating and why are we so full of malice if we can come to a place of acceptance?
Can I share too that my guidance came through on this topic a while back, saying it's actually considered one of the highest honors from the higher self perspective to agree contractually to perform these villainous actions, because it's those actions that will precipitate the growth, the healing of the soul. So they're doing the ultimate service, like, because the human that is in the villain mode typically has gone through a lot of trauma, right? They have to prepare to be this villain. They have to, right? And that's a difficult journey. And from the higher perspective, it's very clear what you're agreeing to. And so they're almost like, yes, I'm gonna help this person so much, right? They get like ecstatic about it.
So that's when I started realizing, Sean, I just adore you. Thank you. It's like you're in my head, man. See, okay, that's exactly what I've been growing through, I should say. And that's when I was like, so really, there isn't such a thing as really a villain. Even our villains can become our heroes, because if it wasn't for those villains, then we wouldn't have chosen to go down that shadow of the valley, to discover who we are, to go through our walkabout, so to speak. And so then I started realizing, I was like, so all of a sudden I was like, I had very neutral feelings that day, Sean, about everything. I was like, well, I'm going to own up that I had chosen to have certain people in my path so that they could burn me. I knew it. I acknowledged it. And I still said, it's worth it. I still said, it's worth it. So I went through with it. So I started noticing as I was working on people, working on me, being downloaded as I'm studying all these different forms of wizardry, going into the timelines, going into the Akashic records, talking to other entities. I was like, oh my God, we are misinformed. We are misinformed. We think, no wonder and then we carry as emotions, because all of the wizardry that I'm studying right now, Sean, is all about emotions and thoughts. Because our emotions and thoughts comprise how we will function in our material plane. And even after we're out of this material plane, our soul cycle. So I was like, wow, this is really important for us to really pull apart and look at and observe, as you were saying. And so when I started noticing emotions and thoughts, if we don't address them, they consume us. They can be our ultimate sabotage or our power. So that's when I was like, I became very neutral, and I was like, wow, so all the people that I screwed over or they screwed over me one way or another, whether we wanted to or not, was not a disservice. It was really to help generate a growth and a personal development that we could not have learned by reading materials or watching on a show. You had to go through it. It had to
and in order for us to know what anything is, we have to see first what it is not. So we have to see the shadow first. Otherwise, we can't perceive the glory of the light, right? And then also, something else was coming in unity, all paradox and polarity dissolves. So good and evil, you know, good and bad, hero and villain, all coalesce into one divine will and love.
That's what happened to me. And I was all, wow. So then there's no need for me to carry or harbor resentment or anger or disappointment any longer. When that happened, is like, I started to have to go down so many loopholes of pain, sorrow. The areas that I thought were effing me up were actually helping me.
And we can thank them.
That's what happened.
And say, thank you for this service. Thank you for your service. And then we can send them love. We don't have to keep them with us, but we thank them, send them love. You say, I accept you. I love your service. And then we go on our way, right?
And
or we may even be able to heal the relationship.
That can happen as well.
We may be able to find healing.
I agree. I just had that.
And we'll know, right? Contextually.
I believe that we do know because all of a sudden we're at peace, and you can't buy that. I don't care whom you pay for it. It must be internal. Now you can have those who guide and aid you and give you wonderful tools and inspire, but it's ultimately ourselves that make that choice. And so
exactly.
Agree. No, thank you so much. I love it. Oh my gosh, Sean, you don't even know, my heart's going like this. Yay,
I feel it. I feel it. My body's tingling.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel it.
And that's where I sit. See, like right now, how beautiful, out of all this timeline, out of all the souls you and I have chosen to find one another, unify, and to communicate our soul's purpose without intruding on one another, but side by side and sharing it together. So I am super free. Just even
my girlfriend always says, like, she runs these conscious coach programs, and in the conscious coach programs, she always says we all rise together. Like, and she goes through these affirmations, and it's so powerful. She's amazing. So and that's just another example of like someone who just comes in and it's just perfect harmony. You know, we have our dust ups. We have our little dust ups, right? Our little you know, some mucky paths that we have to traverse together. But these are, we both are aware that these are orchestrated for our growth. We come at it from that conscious approach. And once we're both doing that, we're just constantly growing, and it's, you know, it's been exponential.
I was just going to say it's exponential. It's a beautiful unison that's happening because the two of you are at the same frequency. So when so that's what I was also explaining too. When I started noticing in relationships with any kind, professional, person, whatever the connection is to the soul, is that at that moment, we are attracting what we are. Frequencies will match. So if so many months ago, even we'll say for myself, my frequency was at a different level. So I was attracting certain people, and that was fine at the moment, but then I kept moving. So now those people are falling away because thank you so much for the lesson. Like you said, many blessings to you. And we respect one another as we continue down our paths, as we're growing for ourselves. And I love that your girlfriend, no wonder you guys are together. See, because we want to affirm one another. There's enough around this world of dismantling, of sabotaging, of destroying, of invading, of being intrusive with one another. And to me, the soul's greatest evolution is being able to accept each other for who we are, differences and all, yet respond in a manner that's respectful and that is kind, and that we give each other space. Because
and I just want to say, the way I see like accepting the other is that what they're showing me is an aspect of self. They are me. So what they're showing me is an aspect of myself. And if I reject it from them, I'm truly rejecting myself. I'm not rejecting them. I'm rejecting myself, because I'm forming them inside of my conscious mind, right? And subconscious. So they are my creation. And they're me. They are me.
I love it.
Right? Yeah, amazing.
This is what I'm hearing right now as I'm being channeled. I'm so excited. I love talking with you. So literally, as you were saying, I got a visual of a mirror. And how about when we do this? When we are pointing, we have those three coming back to us. So it was like interesting. So the people that come in our timeline, the choices that we have to make with certain people in our lives, whether they're in there or not, is for our growth and our development at the end of it all. Good, bad, and indifferent. And it's up to us on how we choose that. And so that's why I was like, life choices. We have so many. And once we come to that conclusion, I feel more free. Okay, at the moment I was sad because I was like, whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot of me having to deal with stuff here. Let's really like chew on this a bit. Now I feel liberated. Now I feel freer. I feel lighter. I feel inspired. And I'm like, now I don't feel like blaming everyone under the sun about, well, this and that. No, I didn't like the things that they did, but those things that they did helped me to be where I'm at today. The things I'm sure I did to them, because I'm not going to try to pretend that I am free from fault. Yeah, right. I wish, but that's not the case, or I wouldn't be here if that was the possibility. But I'm here to help create contrast even with others. Or when they come to me as a healer, I go, let me stir you up a bit. There we go. Boom. Here you are. This is who you really are. And they're like, what? Yeah, you're greater than you gave yourself credit for, sweetheart. Let's find out who you are, and let's keep developing that. So no, it was awesome. You really helped me to see the perspective. My husband and you held space for me that day. My husband was sharing about why we go through certain pains, because it helps us to become more relatable even with others, because we're meant to tap into each other's journey at some point or another. And I was like, that's true. Yes, you're right.
Especially if we're in a healer type of role, like we have to delve into all these different pains and different emotions so that we can then empathize with our clientele, right? As well, like the ones that we're healing or teaching, or
our
we have to
clients,
sort of
our friends.
get it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, we could be like, oh, woe is me. We could stay there, and you should for a while you can process, digest it. And then after a while, it's be like, now what did I gain from that? We have to find our power, even at the times of our loss, because it's through our loss that we gain greater insight. We are able to demonstrate tenacity, perseverance. We are able to grow and develop mentally and expand our thought forms, because we're not stuck in the same loop. So when we're asking, yes, I'm ready. I'm ready to ascend. I'm ready to elevate and grow. Be ready for the choices that you'll have. Because I have a lot of my clients that go, Jess, this is what all of a sudden manifested itself. And I go, so what are you going to do? Well, which one should I do? I go, I can't tell you what to do. Even for readings, they'll come in, well, which one should I take? I'm like, the one that you feel most drawn to.
That's why I don't even get into that. Yeah, I can't even do that with people, because I get so, like,
I'm not going to tell you.
Ask for all this, what do I do? And I'm like, I'm not your boss. Like, yeah, you're the boss.
Options is what you got. It's up to you which one to choose. And then I know other readers will say, well, do this. To me, that's taking away the lesson. That to me is taking away the aha moment by me telling you now, like, here's 3.
That's perfect. Ross says it very, very well. He says, we're all teach learners and learn teachers. We're either in a mode of teaching or learning, but both are happening simultaneously.
All the time.
What we can't do, we can't learn for someone, right? We can't learn for them, which is telling them directly what their answer is, right? That's learning for them. We have to help them pose the question, and then let them find their answer. But we're both, and I'm sure you found this from your clients, you learn from them as you're teaching,
learning,
right?
Every day. This is what happened to me because of me. This is what happens. It expanded my mind so much, and I thought already what I was doing was so powerful and significant, living in my soul's purpose, loving every moment. And then there was more. And then I told my husband, I feel like I just dropped into Alice in Wonderland. Like literally, I felt like someone just dropped me and said, okay, now go function. And I'm like, where the hell am I? What happened here? But that's the greatest thing, is discovering and achieving great things because we have chosen whatever that thing is. Because I was like, well, which one do we choose? And Spirit goes, whatever your desire is at that moment. You have that choice. And I'm like, so if I
trust your heart, right? Trust it.
Whichever the options A through C, and say I choose B, then I must be able to come to a point and claiming and living in the vibration that I am going to achieve great things within myself, regardless of whichever one I chose, and that I can apply the guidance and what I'm learning in the world. And so then that's when it started to really help to calm me down, because I was just like, well, what's the point then? I got to that point, like, what's the point of what choices
when we're truly in alignment, what I've felt is there is no choosing.
Sometimes it falls right into our lap, right?
Going. It falls right in. It falls right into what you're doing. You just go, and you don't even really look at the other options because you don't see them as options, really. The one true heart desire is very clear, so you don't even really look anywhere else.
Attract it, and it falls in, which is why they call them synchronicities.
Exactly. And then it starts just falling. Like even this call, I was like, oh, I'm going to make a video today, or I'm going to definitely record something. Got to get something on the channel. I'm looking really forward to talking to Jess. That's going to be amazing. But I didn't think to record the conversation. And you're like, we should record this. And I'm like, these things just occur naturally. Right. They just flow into it. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, because there is so much that's happening that I'm sure that we're not the only ones, that their brain is beginning to open up to multiple ideas that can simultaneously be present at once. And that's when I go, all right, who's the one that will get and understand me? Sean's going to get it, because you also live in that vibrational world as I do. In our own, we have our own address, but we are pretty much neighbors in the same town, you know. And I'm like, I got to go talk to my neighbor and be like, what is happening? And then I started seeing that at some extent we're still kind of plugged into the system. And while we're plugged into the system, that's when we have multiple choices to choose from. And then that's when I go, wow, life is so complex. This programming is, I can't help but to go back to the Matrix when Neo goes before the architect, and there's all the versions of himself on the screen of multiple ways that he had to deal with this truth. And some of them was like, hell no, that's not true. It's a lie. I don't believe it, because it's too much. And then this version of Neo comes in and he's like, well, I may not be the most amazing being on this planet that can bend a spoon or what have you, but I am still meant to be here. And he accepts his truth. And then all of a sudden, he's in his power. And he's able to navigate the system without the system controlling him. And I was like,
I love how Neo is, what's it called? It's one, Neo, O-N-E, right?
Yeah.
It's what's that word? Is it anagram, or is it, I don't know what the word is, but it's the recognition that we are the one. We are the one infinite creator.
Right.
It's such a subtle little amazing message. He almost, and we're all the one, all of us.
And no, and that's why it says that we are one with everything as we start studying the energies. And then when I started thinking back in my old days, when I used to teach, for the church, I've always been teaching. I've been teaching since I was 15 years old. And so I started learning that we are one with everything. And that's why God calls us to not harm one another, because then we harm ourselves at some level. So we're all interconnected, which is why, though you can be on another side of this world and I'm on the other side, our minds are connecting to some kind of informational highway. And because you and I function at similar code, we were able to extrapolate that information and be like, wow, what is this? So thank you so much, though, for like taking this time with me, because I feel so much better. You and my husband really helped me to feel more at ease, because I was like, I felt like I got plugged out of the system. And then I was like, oh, so oatmeal really doesn't taste this good. I'd rather have ignorance. It's more bliss. No, I don't. And I say that. And even though when I'm crying and freaked out at the moment when revelations happen, I'm still in a place of gratitude, because I'm like, I'm owning this. This is what I want. Overall, I want divine clarity, wisdom, intuition, and insight to lead me into enlightenment as I connect to the gateway to other dimensions. And so here I requested it. So it's happening. So stop crying, right?
Yeah. This is what we asked for. I went through that same sort of like, oh my God, what did I do to myself? Right? I went through
we can't go back. We can't. That's the thing, is that when I tell people, you go forward, you stay going forward, or you can stay where you're remaining, but there's no more going back.
We have the opportunity to find a place, a plateau, and stay there. And that's a perfect choice for many people. But for some of us, we're like, no, we're going to go higher. We're going to go further. And then when we go further, there's also this challenge that comes with it. Opportunity for us, in order for
challenges are opportunities, if anything. Exactly. You, friend. No, you are amazing. Thank you so much, Sean. I feel so much better. I hope that whomever watches this that are maybe going through something similar, that they're starting to see certain patterns and they're becoming to a place of acceptance of the totality that we are existing in, good, bad, and indifferent, because I think that we were all conditioned as we're growing up, good, bad. And it's like, but the two must coexist for us to be present where we're at and really gain something for ourselves. So of course, no one likes the bad stuff. And of course, no one wants the growth period to happen to achieve what they called into their existence, because it's so uncomfortable. And I was like, oh yeah, this is really uncomfortable. I did request all these things. It's been so long. I forgot what this feels like. Oh my gosh. So no wonder they text me and be like, what's happening, Jess? And I'm like, you're all right. You're going to make it. And so thank you for telling me it's all right. We're making it. We're exactly where we need to be. And thank you so much for the soul connection, because sometimes now that's why I open up my opportunity for my Vibe Tribe to reach out. I'm like, look, I'll get back to you when I can in between sessions.
Right.
But this is why. This was just confirming and validating why we need spiritual support, that SOS, souls supporting, we're supporting one another.
And a lot of us, we can feel like we don't really have that ourselves when we're in sort of healing roles and stuff. We can feel like we don't have the healer that we can go to, and really it doesn't have to be like it really is just somebody who gets it, right, that can help reflect the same states and understands the journey that you've been on.
Agreed. And that's what my husband said last night. Even he goes, healers need healers, teachers need teachers. He goes, really, at the end, when we put ego aside, we really need one another to some level. That can help us to be motivated and to develop a greater guidance for ourselves by connecting with one another. We don't have to tell each other what to do, but just this, liberating, so freeing. And I feel so much more at peace. I'm like, thank goodness I'm not the only one that's seeing this, because I was like, there's a lot to all this timeline stuff. I'm like, they all coincide right now. Different multi dimensions and versions of time coexist. And depending where we're at on the brainwave, because that brain is like a signal, like a satellite, and wherever we're turning in, I tell people, you just move just a little bit, the way you perceive, and all of a sudden you have a whole other understanding. Just a little bit, just turn a little bit and try to understand why that person thinks and feels the way they do. Maybe you don't have the experience yet, but there is truth to that person's story, whether we can relate by experience or not. But being a place of openness just to hear can plant a seed and do something wonderful in each and every one of us. So yes, awesome. Well, thank you,
Sean.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you big time.
Thank you for suggesting to record it. I think it was an amazing talk, and I think it makes sense to put it up on the YouTube channel.
Yes.
So I'll link your services and stuff below in the description, and
absolutely,
so people can reach out to you if they want to.
Absolutely, I would love that. And then I want to go ahead and bring you onto mine, and we talk about a topic so that others can see that I have a lot of female perspective, but I want the males to see too that it's not, what we're experiencing is not generally just for the feminine. It is for all, for every existence under here. So you bring in a different sense of security for men that are like you, exceptional, brilliant beings that also can sense different energies unlike others, but you're real. So by you sharing your story, you give them an opportunity to feel safe as well. So thank you. And I would love to have you whenever, but yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely. And at some point you're going to have to meet Tassel.
I want to.
You're going to have to meet her.
Absolutely.
Actually, we tend to use the word partner because girlfriend seems minimizing, right? Like, right?